Welcome to Awakening Streams, the podcast of One River Zen Meditation Center in Ottawa, Illinois. Hosted by Sensei Michael Brunner. Learn more, donate, and practice with us at oneriverzen.org.
So here we are, first full day of Rohatsu Sesshin. Sesshin is a wonderful way of shaking things up. Yeah? Shaking things up by just sitting still. Yeah? We all go about our lives and develop our habits, develop our worldviews, our ideas, even our ideas about spirituality. And it's interesting how this idea kind of rises to the surface. We start to say, I'll be okay when. Yeah? We're in search of that one last thing. I'll be okay when. Everything is fine when this happens. There's one piece I'm missing. And, it's almost like we're completing a jigsaw puzzle, right? Got that last piece that's always there, that we just can't quite fill it in. It's born of scarcity. It's born of us, the fact that all stories have their limits. They can't always explain the truth of our lived experience all the time. So Sesshin is a way of just sweeping that puzzle off onto the floor and then having your life burst forth. Letting go of our ideologies. Doesn't mean that those things go away. It means that we're loosening our grip on them. We're no longer identified with them. Then we find our actual nature. We return to the source. There's a case in Mumonkan. It's case number 31. It's titled, Joshu Sees Through an Old Woman. A monk once asked an old woman, "What is the way to Taizan?" The old woman said, "Go straight on." After the monk had gone a few steps, she said, "This good, honest priest goes off that way too." Later, a monk told Joshu about this. Joshu said, Wait a bit. I'll go and see through the old woman for you." The next day, he went and asked the same question, and the old woman made the same reply. On returning, Joshu said to his disciples, "I have seen through the old woman of Taizan for you." So Joshu appears 7 times in the Mumonkan. This is the 6th time that he appears. So all of you are very well acquainted with him by now, yes? The progenitor of lips and tongue Zen, using words and concepts to point well beyond the clinging ideals of word and concepts. And just in case you've really developed an affinity for him, you can go on to meet him another 12 times in the Blue Cliff Record and another 5 in the Book of Serenity. So in any event, he's one of the crowning jewels, one of the heroes in the pantheon of Zen teachers in this lineage. So this old woman is supposed to have lived in a small snack shop, right, at the foot of a mountain called Taizan. It's a mountain in North China, which has 5 peaks. And legend has it that it is a dwelling place of the Bodhisattva Manjushri, right? So it was revered as a very holy mountain. The Bodhisattva Manjushri, you would all know him as the embodiment of the wisdom of practice, right? Prajna, what comes up before knowing. This is the epitome of why we do this practice, to open up to wisdom, to recognize the truth of the lived experience that's right before our face. So you see Manjushri everywhere in Zen temples, right? A statue of Manjushri is generally put in the center of the Zen hall, and you circumnavigate when you're doing Kinyin around Manjushri. Yeah? And from ancient times, Zen practitioners who were living in China at that time used to make pilgrimages to this holy mountain, Taizan, where Manjushri was revered. Right? Trust me, you don't have to go to Taizan to meet Manjushri, but at any rate, you understand kind of the backstory here. And so here's a fork in the road in the old woman's shop. And whenever a monk stops and asks her, I see a fork in the road, which way is the way to Taizan? She continues to answer, go straight on. And when the monk begins to walk, she would say, behind his back, right? He looks really good, yeah? Dressed in his monk's finery, comporting himself properly, right? Ostensibly an honest monk. But here he goes off in the same way, just like everybody else. And you can just imagine the tone of the woman's voice, right? All of these monks are just seeking something that's right in front of their noses. Why don't they get it? Why don't they get it? You want to see wisdom? Come here, I'll show you wisdom. Yeah. You know that from the Zen point of view, if a practitioner searches for Manjushri somewhere outside of your own lived experience, you're going the wrong way. Yeah? You have to experience directly. Shift your gaze. Engage in wonder. Drop off those ideas about what you think things are supposed to be, what you expect them to be, and see them as they are. If you want to attain awakening, enlightenment, just go straight on. It's as close as your next breath. It's as near as your next footstep. Yeah. But since most of the monks didn't count on getting engaged in Dharma combat when asking for directions at their local convenience store, right? They actually listened to the directions that were provided, right? Rather than seeing it for what it was. So their expectations, in a way, get in the way. But so do the expectations of the old woman, yeah? So the woman is always predictably disappointed, yeah? But what did she expect? That's why she asked the question in the first place, to provoke this, yeah? So the monk who appears in this koan was most likely a disciple of Joshu, right? And so he goes back to the mother temple and mentions this incident. They ask the master's opinion, maybe even help. He's likely troubled. Yeah? Why? Why? Why is the monk troubled? Yeah? Maybe it startled him. Maybe he thought she thought he thought she had the best of him, and she didn't recognize him. He had judgments. He had insecurities. No one's supposed to be able to show me up. I'm a Zen student. I study with Joshu, right? He's a pretty big deal, you know. Yeah? So Joshu calmly says, wait a bit. I'll go see through this old woman for you. Right? He's going to go engage her in Dharma combat, right? Let's see. So the next day, Joshu goes off. He asks the same question. And he gets the same answer, yeah? But when he returns to his disciples, he says, I've seen through the old woman of Taizan for you. Joshu doesn't tell us how he did it, what he saw. But this is the most important part of the koan. What did Joshu see? To examine this, beyond any grasping or ideal or expectation, to be able to bring that back is the point of this case. So, ostensibly, Joshu was able to penetrate and discern the depth of this woman's awakening, right? But when he came back, he didn't say anything about good or bad, yay or nay. Yeah. But he did see through her all the same. Matter of fact, for the first time, she was seen for what she was. When we see self and other, good and bad, old and young, woman and man, we don't see particularly clearly. We create problems with our labels and judgments. No label, every label is loaded, right? It's not even self-referentially true. It needs other labels or constructs to create it. So you get all this baggage that comes up every time you try to do those labels and judgments. And so we wrestle with this. We try to find some solution to our own delusive thoughts by using our own delusive thoughts. Yeah. Yeah. You can see how twisted karma can become over time with this mess. Mumon, the person who collected the case, wrote a commentary about this case. And he said, the old woman just sits in her tent and she knows how to plan the strategy, but she still doesn't know how to capture the bandit. Old Joshu was clever enough to steal the camp and menace the fortress, but he hasn't the air of a magnanimous man. There's no virtue here, right? Pondering the matter, we must say they both had their faults. Tell me now, what insight did Joshu get into the old woman? So we wonder, Mumon's sitting here and railing against the woman in a way, saying she just sits in her tent and plans the campaign, right? She lays down the trap, but she doesn't know how to ever capture the enemy, right? What is the enemy in this case? She's never able to escape her own snare of delusive thoughts. She's grasping onto some idea of self and other and right and wrong, and she doesn't show any positive activity, the activity of the bodhisattva, like releasing them from suffering, by dropping her own judgments. Yeah? But then Mumon goes on to say about Joshu, he was clever enough to steal into the camp and menace the fortress, right? He brought this into stark relief. But he hasn't the air of a magnanimous man. He didn't follow a path of virtue in so doing, did he? He laid a trap based on the predictability and expectations and judgments of the situation, too. Yeah. He went with expectations and he had plans, rather than just being open to what it was as it presented itself. In a way, Joshu's doing that to point to something very important and very special. Yeah. But the important thing is, what's your view of this old woman? This old woman presents herself all the time. What's really there before you grasp, before you judge? The capping verse for this, the question is the same. The answer is the same too. Sand in the rice, thorns in the mud. The monks usually asked, what way do I go to Taizan? As a rule, the woman always answered, go straight on. Joshu asked the same question and gets the same response. The questions are the same, the answers are the same, but Joshu's question has a hook in it. And this hook is like a grain of sand and rice, and if you chew it carelessly, you're going to injure your teeth. Maybe that'll be enough, yeah? Or it's like a barb in a thorn of mud, or a barb of a thorn in mud. If you step on it barefooted, you're going to hurt, yeah? If you walk around asleep, dangers abound, yeah? One of these dangers will be enough to snap you out of the delusive trauma and drama that you weave around this narrative of the small self. Move beyond your expectations. Move beyond your judgments. Have some confidence that you can see clearly without the brace of your judgments. You don't need an ideological framework, right? You have everything you need to perceive correctly. When we let go, then we see what's there. And when we see clearly things as they are, there isn't a problem. The problem comes in when it doesn't meet our expectations. problem comes in when it doesn't align with our own values and judgments. To get here doesn't require, rocket science or ballistics knowledge, yeah? It requires a shifting of your gaze. And you can shift your gaze just by releasing your grasp. Think how often we spend our time wallowing in our insecurities. And all these insecurities are born of a paradigm of scarcity. I'll be okay when. The old refrain of the small self that keeps coming up. But when we let go, we see through our judgments and we're able to strike at the heart of wisdom, of prajna, right? What's before knowing. And then we can live in a state of wonder. What an amazing way to be. Seeing every moment like it's new and novel. Why do we do that? Because it is. Yeah, because it is. Yeah. So when we do this, we're able to release all of our captives. All the captives that are tied up by our labels. And we're free to actually live. To live, to serve, to see where we can be of service clearly. So just put it down. Just put it down. And be present. Yeah. Cultivate that state of wonder. And then you can engage skillfully with what's directly in front of you.
Thank you for joining us. If this podcast was meaningful to you and supported your practice, please give us a hand by joining us at oneriverzen.org.